Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Winning with Beckwith. I am so excited about this week's guest. And as I've been saying, we're always going to bring people on that are at the top of their game in leadership, business development, and really just growing a business. And so this episode we have Cynthia Lewis, who is a loan officer here at OVM Financial. And I actually have her numbers here. So in 2019, she closed $32 million in loans. And already in 2021, get ready for this, she's already at 60 million, and that's just through the month of September. So we still have 3 months left, and she's already doubled her business from just 2 years ago. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Here we go. All right, welcome to Winning with Beckwith Podcast. I couldn't be any more excited about this week's guest. She is a legend in the mortgage business, right?
You're too kind.
It's Cynthia Lewis. We've been working together for over 10 years. Yep. Can you believe that?
I can't. It went by fast.
10 years. So I've known Cynthia for actually over 10 years because I was trying to convince her to come work with me before that.
Yeah.
And finally convinced her about 10 years ago. So we work together at OVM Financial. She is a loan officer. She does tons of business. I was actually just looking at your numbers last week. And do you know you've actually doubled your business in the last 2 years?
I didn't know that. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, so she doubled her business in the last 2 years. And really what she's done what you've done with building your team and scaling up your business, I think as we've talked about it, I mean, I'm just personally proud of you. Like just watching what you've done over the last 10 years building your business is just amazing. So with that being said, I would love for you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So like Matt said, I've known Matt for over 10 years. And those 10 years have gone by so fast because time always flies when you're having fun. And I've definitely been having an amazing time here at OVM. I've been in the business since 2003, started shortly right after college. So this is pretty much all I know. Real estate, mortgages, it's all I know. I have been here at OVM for over 10 years. And within that 10-year time frame, what attracted me to OVM was that there were managers here who also produced, and owners actually who also produced. And I was looking 10 years ago for a way to build my business. I knew that I wanted to not just be an independent loan officer. I couldn't keep running at that capacity because at that point I had already been doing it for like 7 or 8 years. And I remember sharing in that meeting with Matt, the way that I'm working, the way that I'm running has an expiration period. Like I can't do this forever. And so what attracted me here and attracted me to Matt as a coworker, colleague, and friend, and even a mentor, most importantly, was simply, it's well-deserved. I'm going to give you your flowers because you deserve them.
Yeah, Cynthia is a great friend, by the way. She is an awesome person.
Thank you. But just being able to grow, getting individuals like Matt and so many others to show me what that looks like. I'm the type of person, I'm a visual learner, so I've got to see it. And to be able to work with so many people that not only believe that I could do it, but show me how to do it. And now here we are today.
Yeah, so Cynthia is a loan officer, and we talked a little bit about this on some of the previous episodes, but she doesn't get any business from OVM. So she has to go out, find her own clients, find her own referral partners. In our world, that's real estate agents typically. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the principles that she applied to her business over the last 10 years, it really applies to all businesses. And so we talk about this a lot. What we know is mortgages and real estate, and that's what we deal with on a regular basis. But really, it doesn't matter if you're a doctor, a lawyer, electrician, a builder, a general contractor. It really doesn't matter. A lot of the principles that she put into place really applies to all businesses. The thing that, I think one of the things that triggered me to do the podcast actually was some of my frustrations with different contractors, which This is no cut on contractors. But we all get to the point in whatever trade we're in where we're really good at that trade. Mm-hmm. So if you're a plumber and you're really good at the actual job, all right, maybe I won't use plumber. Let's use electrician.
There you go.
So if you're really good as an electrician, it gets to the point where you can only do but so much by yourself. If you own a bakery and you make the best cakes in town, you can only make but so many cakes by yourself. Eventually there's a line waiting for the cakes outside the door, and you're trying to take everybody's payments.
Right.
Right? You're trying to take orders. you're trying to process your books for the accounting, and you have to make all the cakes, right? So no different in our business. We're not making cakes. We're lending money.
Right.
Right. And so, we'll get into the nuts and bolts. But before we do that, I wanted to ask you one big question. This is probably the most important question.
Okay.
So tell us one fun fact about Cynthia that has nothing to do with business.
What a lot of people don't know about me unless we grew up together is that I actually played basketball.
Whoa, I didn't even know that.
From the time I was 9 to my freshman year in high school. And to this day, I actually still have a pretty mean 3-point shot.
Really?
Yes.
What position?
I played power forward or small forward.
Okay. All right.
Sometimes point guard. Occasionally, I didn't have the best handle on the team. My right hand was really strong. My left hand wasn't the strongest, but I definitely played power forward.
Wow. Never knew that. You learn something new every day.
Every day.
So in our market, in Hampton Roads, Tidewater area, I'm just going to say this. Cynthia is a legend when it comes to mortgages. She's created a brand and identity, and that's why she's doubled her business the last couple of years. And we're not going to spend all this, the whole podcast talking about how great you are, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So, one thing that I wanted to talk about too, that I have in my notes here is it's not always easy. I think when you see the finished product of somebody like Cynthia and you look at the business she's put together and she's created today, it's so easy to think that it happens overnight. But I know because I've watched it.
Yeah.
Like there's been so many ups and downs over the last 10 years of mistakes, learning lessons, things that you think are the right decision that aren't the right decision. And so that's another reason I wanted to have her on here, because she's going to be able to share some of those mistakes with the audience and some of the things that have really gone well. So let's back up, because I know you said you've been in the mortgage business since 2003, right?
Yes.
How did you get in the mortgage business? I mean, how did you even discover it?
Honestly, my dad. What happened was the year prior to me graduating from college, I worked in a real estate office. I was a receptionist at the real estate office, and I used to hand out the mail. And handing out the mail, I became privy because one of the agent's commission checks, this was, tell you how long ago it was, right? They weren't wiring. They were actually giving hard copy checks.
Yeah.
And so one of the checks happened to be open for whatever the reason. Myself being a young, inquisitive college student, I opened up the envelope a little more to see what was actually in there, and the check was $30,000.
Wow.
So it was at that point I realized that whatever I was going to school for wasn't it. But I wanted to be in real estate. So I went home, had a conversation with my dad, and I was like, hey, I really think I want to be a real estate agent. He explained to me what it was, but naturally, as parents they wanted to see the degree that they were paying for me to be put to use in some kind of way, shape, or form. So my dad is actually the one that kind of directed me into going the mortgage route. And so here we are.
And that's
been here ever since.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
That was good. So, one of the main things we're going to be touching on today is scaling up your business. And I alluded to it earlier, but we all get to the point where we can only handle what we can handle. It just becomes you're in such high demand. Your services are in such high demand that you have to start thinking about hiring people. So, as a business owner, which is what you are, right? When did you know? When did that point happen where you're like, you know what, I need some help? Like, how did you know that?
I think it happened. Well, I came to OVM knowing that I wanted to grow. Not necessarily knowing what it looked like, but knowing that I wanted to grow. And so growth, of course, means having that help. But I was still kind of young in my career to know exactly what that looked like. I would say maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, I realized that I was getting to the point where I was going to need some help. I had just brought on a fairly good sized firm, weren't getting anything from them just yet, but I saw that the business was turning the corner, and I knew, kind of once those floodgates opened, that I wasn't going to be able to do this by myself. So again, not really knowing, because traditionally we're taught in this business, okay, the first step is hire an assistant. Not really knowing what that looked like, having a game plan, thanks to so many of the great people that work here, Matt, Chip, and George, of how to utilize one, but still didn't know how to hire, where to find one, or etc. But I knew probably about 5 or 6 years ago that I needed to kind of start opening that window up to get some help.
Yeah, so hiring the first employee is key.
Mm-hmm.
And I think really the scaling up position or getting into position to scale up really happens with that first employee.
Absolutely.
Right. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm excited. So that first employee a lot of times ends up being one of your key people. Not always, but eventually they end up taking leadership roles. And I think hiring the first employee is the hardest, right, but most important decision we can make. So tell me about hiring that first employee. The first person you hired, did they work out?
No. No. The first, the second, the third, the fourth, nor the fifth or the sixth person worked.
Yeah.
No, they didn't work out. Not at all.
Yeah, and I already knew that, and that's why I asked her. So one thing to remember is you're not always going to find the right person off the bat, because sometimes what we think we need or the type of person that we need isn't always the right person. And
Absolutely.
so you can't be afraid to revisit that. Or try to find, I mean, if they are a good employee, but maybe they're not doing exactly what you wanted them to do,
right,
maybe find another position for them on your team. But at the same time, don't be afraid to make changes at the beginning. That's one thing from watching Cynthia's business grow that we talked about a lot, was like, hey, this person's not working out. What should I do? And she always was ready to have those hard conversations and to make a move quickly if she needed to.
Absolutely. And I do think that's key, is to identify it quickly and, move on. It's going to be best for you. It's going to be best for them. And it's going to be best for the life of the business.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to have that conversation. And just because a person doesn't work, and this is something I had to get over, it doesn't make them a bad person. It doesn't make them not good at the role or the position. It just wasn't a fit for what you needed. So a lot of times I have a young lady that's on my team right now that was actually hired for one position, but it wasn't working, and we were able to move her into another position on the team. And I mean, it speaks leaps and bounds. I mean, it's great for the team, it's great for her personal life, and it's great for my life. So it's all about figuring out who and what fits.
Yeah. So the first employee, like, what do you look for? Like, what position are you thinking, like, from the very beginning? So describing their characteristics. So I know what your skill set is, right? So we'll just talk about you for a second. You are very good at talking to people. You're very good about going out and getting business. And honestly, just kind of relaying your vision, what your team can do to help other people buy a house, get a loan, how you can help your partners grow their business. You're really good at that, right? So are you going to hire somebody like that? Or what kind of position are you looking for from day one with your personality?
So in my personality, and I think you hit it on the head, right? The first part in doing that whole thing is identifying who you are, right? Figuring out what your strengths and your weaknesses are. And typically you want to hire something that is the opposite of that, because you don't necessarily at that point need to duplicate yourself. You need someone who's going to offset you or balance you. One thing, and everyone may be a little different, if I could go back in time with my hiring process, I probably would have hired a little differently, right?
Yeah.
I think I would have brought on my production role first versus the assistant role.
Okay.
And the reason that I say that, for me, and again, everybody in every business is different, my production role is still my counter opposite, right? There's still the yin to my yang, so to speak. But that role would have, I feel, have allowed me to be able to build my business as well as build other teams, maybe simultaneously, versus where I had to build a business with an admin role. I continued to build a business to the point that I could bring on a production.
Okay, so the people that aren't in the mortgage business, kind of describe those two differences. Like, what do you mean production?
Sure. So a production manager or a production partner, however you label it, is kind of that individual that comes right under you, right? Okay. So in the contracting world, it might be your general foreman, supervisor, right?
Okay, yeah.
In the chef world, it might be like your sous chef, that person that comes right under you that can do pretty much.
Your number two, basically.
Your number two, your go-to person. They can pretty much do everything that you do. They know the inner workings, the operations. They know how you want things done. They just may not be as strong in bringing in the business, right? Bringing in the sales, but they can run the operation of your business from day to day. So that, for us, a production manager is like, that's the exchange there. Whereas an admin person, they are basically strong at the administration side of things. So, for us, it's paperwork, submitting files, putting files together. For real estate agents, it may be a file coordinator. In another business, for a plumber, it may be an office assistant or a secretary, that person that kind of handles the paperwork, make sure that things still get done correct, check all the boxes, but they're more on the administrative side. So for me, like I said, going back to it, if I could do it all over again, hindsight's always 20/20. That's the biggest thing about any business is an ever learning experience. I think I would have gone the production role first.
Yeah. So one thing that when I talk to business owners, loan officers, real estate agents, a lot of people get caught up on this point, which is they're too worried about the short-term cost and they're not looking at the long-term gain. So if you can remember this is key. When you're building your business, you will take a financial hit at the beginning. It does cost money at the beginning to start building your business, right?
Absolutely.
And so I know for me personally, when I first went to my first mortgage boss in my world, I said, "Hey, I'm really starting to get busy. Will you help me get an assistant?" Right? So I went to the company I worked for and I wanted an assistant. And the guy, great guy, really good mentor. Maybe I'll have him on here one day. But, he called his boss and, called me back. He said, "You know what? We just feel like you need to be at X amount of dollars in revenue before we will, help you get an assistant." I knew, right, that I needed an assistant to grow my business. And I looked at him. I said, "Well, if you're not going to do it, I'm just going to pay for it myself." And he looked at me and said, "You're going to pay for it yourself?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to pay for it myself because I know that's how much I believe in the business I'm growing, that I'm going to do it." And so I just paid for it myself. And so in our world, we work for a company, right, that in the mortgage business, they will sometimes help out with our assistants. If you own your own business, you don't have that, right, that luxury. You actually have to pay for it all out of your pocket like I did at the beginning. And so one thing that you have to lose sight of is that upfront cost and look at the amount more business that you'll be able to close. Absolutely. Right, by adding team members. So you may make less per deal, right? This is an important point. You may make less per deal than you used to, right?
Yes.
But you're able to grow your business so much that you more than make up for that over time, right? So just remember the short-term loss is going to help you out in the long-term gain. The other piece when you hire your first employee, and you can probably speak to this too, but I think we get the false impression that immediately from day one, it's going to be less work.
Absolutely. And I've seen so many people make this mistake. And I made it myself, literally in every step of my business up until probably about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Where you bring on a teammate and you're so excited that they're there and you're so excited what the end game of that is that you forget the steps in between. So it's literally like they walk through the door, I hired you for this, now go do it. And you kind of just step back, take a breather. I mean, honestly, anybody that runs their own business, right, or does their own line of work, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
So the sign of help is kind of like a reprieve and you feel like, oh, finally I can take a breath. And you can to a degree, but you cannot walk away. Even at the level that I'm at, even at the level that you're at, right, we still show up for our business every day. I still show up every single day. So you can't ever step away. You kind of just step more so into circles that are more designed and better suited for what you bring to the table.
Yeah, and it's actually at the beginning, just so everybody knows, it's actually more work at the beginning. Because here's what you're doing. You're training your first employee, right? You're basically teaching them. So if you own a bakery and you had this amazing cake and these amazing pastries, you have to teach them how to make that and still run the business you were running before. So you're basically doing everything that you were doing plus adding on more work because you have to train somebody. And
that's why I say if I could do it over again, I would have went the production manager route first. Yeah. Because they could have done all that and I could have still kept growing.
Yep. So. And I will say, I mean, every business is different. The only thing with somebody at that level, when you hire your number two at the beginning, I'll just caution everybody that those people usually cost a lot of money.
That's true. That
so
is
you
true.
Can't always afford the number two at first, but that's okay. I know my number two. It took me about 3 years to convince him that He needs to come over, but I love him, but he wasn't cheap. He knows what I'm talking about.
And that is true too. So that it could be either a very bigger setback in the beginning, to where you're taking a huge hit, or you go the traditional route like most of us do. It just I think what suits your business.
Yeah, for sure. And so, kind of backing up a little bit, I think I got excited there. Kind of got off base there, but so going back to that first employee. Cynthia's really good about driving the business, right? And so she wanted, at the beginning, she hired somebody to help her business from more of a paperwork standpoint. Mm-hmm. That's what she ended up doing because that wasn't necessarily her strong suit. I know you can do it.
Right.
You're just like me. We could do it. We don't like it. Mm-hmm. And so I encourage you, when you're looking at that first employee in your business, hire somebody better than you are at whatever their job is.
Absolutely.
You always want to try to, and I've heard this, 100 times on other leadership podcasts and other forums, but it's so true. We want to hire people that are better than us.
Absolutely. In
whatever we're hiring them for, and that'll really help you grow your business fast.
Absolutely. It's a running joke on my team. I joke all of them and say, I can do everyone's job on this team. You guys just can do it a lot better than I can. Yeah. But that's what you want. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room at that specific task. You want to be great at what you're designed to do in your business.
Yeah, and you just made me think of something because Cynthia is so humble, and she really she gives her team the opportunity to give her feedback, which as a leader in your business, don't be too proud or too prideful, right? To let your team give you feedback, because a lot of times they're seeing stuff that we're not seeing.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't mean they're right. At the end of the day, as the owner of the business or the leader in the organization, you have the final call, right?
Absolutely.
But I think letting them get their voices out and being a part of those decisions, number one, makes them feel more involved, right? Whether you use their idea or you don't use their idea, it definitely makes them feel more involved. So I love that you're humble enough to do that. Oh, I would say that I'm that humble, but some days I'm that humble. Not every
they're
day.
Boots on the ground, so there are certain things that they're going to see and be privy to that I'm just not involved in that. And if they're the ones doing it every day, of course we want it to be most efficient for the business, right? For the team, the brand. But I also want them to love and be happy with what they're doing. So I always welcome the feedback. Yeah.
So before you hired that first employee, did you already know what your long-term plan was for your business?
Gosh, no. No,
I knew you didn't, and that's why I asked you, but go ahead.
I didn't even have a clue. I mean, honestly, where, I've been blessed to reach today, I didn't even know was feasible at that time. Honestly, I just knew I needed help. I was struggling with paperwork. I hated looking at bank statements. I always got them wrong. I was an underwriter's nightmare when I submitted a file. I just knew that I needed help. I needed someone that could do that aspect of it. So didn't have a goal, didn't have a vision.
You didn't have a clue. And I think that's why I asked you, because I see so many people caught up in wanting to know how everything is going to work, and they almost freeze.
Yeah.
I see it in our business all the time, but really all businesses, you almost just freeze because you want to know what the end goal is, or what it's going to look like in 5 years and 10 years. And I'm not saying long-term plans aren't good. They're good. And we'll talk about that on different episodes. All I'm saying is, if you asked me today what my business was going to look like, right, 5 years ago, if I'd known what it was going to look like today, I had no clue.
Right.
Sometimes you just got to put one foot in front of the other, right? And like Cynthia said, she knew she needed help, right? In order to be able to grow her business, she knew she needed help. And so sometimes you just got to take that step and have that faith of hey, I'm just going to do it.
Right.
And as we figure everything out, then I'll start working on that long-term vision, and then I'll probably have to revisit it every 6 months because things change so much.
Things change. And I also think in taking those steps, you learn and figure out who you are. Back then when I knew I wanted to grow, I didn't really know who I was in my business. I didn't really know what I like to do or what tickled my fancy. I was pretty keen on what I didn't like to do. I was pretty well in tune to that. But I didn't know who I was. So as you grow and as you take those steps, you begin to identify yourself and realize the best use of yourself in your business. And then I think the key is to build around that.
That's so good. I hope we got that. That was so good. We were thinking, Well, I was thinking earlier how as business owners and business leaders, we're so afraid sometimes to let stuff go, right? The whole control thing. Mm-hmm. And just going back to this first employee, and I know we could talk about scaling up a business way past the first employee, but I think we tend to freeze up in that because we're worried they're going to make mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. So how much leeway do you give your team to make mistakes as they're doing important tasks, right, that are important to the business? How much leeway do you give them?
I give them a lot of grace, a lot of leeway with that, because the important thing to remember is they're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes. Made a huge one last week, which they came back and said, well, if you would just stay in your lane, this probably wouldn't have happened. And they're right. Yeah. Had I just stayed in my lane doing what I did or what I do, it would not have happened. Yeah. So the key is always remember, they're going to make mistakes. They're human. None of us walk on water. We're going to make mistakes. But what's important is I feel being able to recover from that. So what I've learned over the years, I've put fail safes in place. Yeah. And I think any business can do this. You put certain fail safes in place that even when they make mistakes, it doesn't have to be detrimental to the business.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think so many people are afraid of their team making mistakes, and you do have to give them room to grow and room to make mistakes, because although I believe, you have to train them and you have to get them prepared for that role, but the best way to learn is for them to just do it, right? And there's certain things, no matter what business you're in, that you have to make sure that don't happen, right? And I'm not saying they could just run around acting crazy, making crazy mistakes. That's not what I mean. It's within boundaries that you set as a leader. But I'll tell you this, and let's say you're an electrician and you hire somebody to collect payments. That's pretty important that they collect the payments, right? So they don't want to make mistakes there. So you may have to follow up, check on them, making sure you're getting the money, right, to pay your bills and to pay their salary ultimately. They need to make sure that they get that. So there's room within boundaries, but you definitely need to give them room to make mistakes. And I think so many times in our world and other worlds, I think that's one of the things that hold people back from hiring and scaling up their business.
Absolutely. And I think too, an important thing for anyone looking to grow or scale in any industry is people will never respect what you don't inspect.
That's good.
So
that's really good.
That's another key of you cannot walk away. You have to give them room. You have to give them leeway, but you should be following up as well. We should be following up behind them, checking behind them to make sure that they're doing the part that they need to do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, let me ask you this. How many team members do you have on your team right now?
9.
So you manage 9 people.
Yes.
Right? And you have a number 2 on your team.
Correct.
All right. What other leaders do you have on your team?
So I have a number 2, which is a production manager. And then I have a loan officer supervisor who she's pretty much, as far as Lewis 3.0 is concerned, been my day one. She's been with me the longest on everyone on the team. And so she supervises the loan officers. Yeah.
So the reason I brought that up is because we have focused a lot on hiring that first employee. I just wanted to show you where Cynthia's business is today and how she scaled it up to 9 employees. And how many employees did you have 2 years ago? Just roughly. I know you didn't. First of all, she didn't do any preparation for this, so everything's off the top of the head, so which you're killing it.
So 2 years ago, we would have been over at Greenbrier. So it would have just been 2. And then Justin came on towards the end.
So 3 employees about 2 years ago. She now has 9 employees. She's doubled her business. I don't think that is by luck.
No.
Right? If you look at what she's done and how she's put the infrastructure of her team in place, the results speak for itself. And so there's so many more things I wanted to talk to you about. All right? But we're coming close to the end of this episode 1. I just have one more question, and then we'll probably wrap up here in a second, and we will wrap up. So will you join me for one more episode? Because I feel like there's so many more things we can hit on.
Absolutely. I was going to say, you can always just bring me back.
Well, we're gonna do it here in a few minutes. How's that?
That works.
Because there are so many things I was going to get to. But just sum up this episode and wrap it up. When we get to the point where we're too busy and we have a high demand for our services, that's when you know you got to start hiring in your business. And so we talked about that first employee and kind of what to look for on this episode. So when we get to the episode 2 that she just so graciously agreed to do, we're going to talk about really how you develop your employees into leaders, right? Which is really the next step in scaling. So you can't do all the leading yourself. You have to have people on your team that can manage the day-to-day, do the leader. So you as the business owner, you're the CEO of your business, right?
Absolutely.
And so your job is to continue the business to bring in, make sure everything goes smooth for your clients and for your customers. And so we're going to talk a lot about that. But let's wrap this episode up. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Again, Cynthia Lewis is a legend, right? And so join us for the next episode because we're going to be talking a little bit more about scaling up your business.